Hello BookTube. I'm making these videos today, my usual slate of videos, my therapy, my in-house therapy, but I'm making them much like throwing a penny down a well. It's pouring rain here, just slapping down, and it has been for hours. And as you know, the Wi-Fi that goes in and out of your house is made of tiny little pebbles. I know you've heard all sorts of urban rumors about it being electronic, electromagnetic, but it's not. It's made of tiny little pebbles that stream out from your modem to the nearest service tower and back. And wind can dislodge those pebbles, and so can rain. And when it rains, my Wi-Fi tends to die. The rain weighs down those pebbles, and you find them scattered. You find the Wi-Fi pebbles scattered all over the ground the next morning. Someday, humanity will invent a purely intangible way to create Wi-Fi and send it through the air unaffected by things like rain or snow or wind. But we haven't reached that blessed day yet. So I'm not sure that any of these videos are going to upload or how long it's going to take. But I thought I would do it anyway because I get cranky if I don't talk to you. So I thought the first video we'd do here today would be just miscellaneous arrivals. Just stuff. Like, for instance, the mail. One of the things I got was the Martha's Vineyard Gazette. This is a big broadsheet newspaper that starts at the back. All readers start at the back with the Vineyard Gardener and birds and all that. And then they read forward. This is a local newspaper, so it's got lots of obituaries, lots of farm notices, lots of local profiles, local notices of pets that need adoption, that sort of thing. And the editorial right in the middle of the paper is the sweet spot, the editorial page with op-eds and columns and reflections and whatnot, and occasionally a book review by yours truly, but only of local books. Books that are either set on the vineyard or who are written by somebody who's living on the vineyard or who has lived on the vineyard or where there's a connection of some kind or other. That is totally legitimate. That is a local newspaper choice that editors can make, where it can codify into a house style, into a tradition where you just say, this is a local paper, so we will keep our focus pretty much tightly, cornered on our little patch of ground. Not all local newspapers do that, which is why whenever I mention the Vineyard Gazette now, I sort of need to make a mention of another small town newspaper, very small newspaper, Big Canoe News in northern Georgia. The Vineyard Gazette comes out twice a week, every 2 weeks, every week. The Big Canoe News is a much bigger production. First of all, the Vineyard Gazette is traditionally just black and white. Very beautiful black and white photography. I don't know if you can make out, I never can tell if you can make out the detail there. But the front page and the interior black and white photos in the Gazette are beautiful. Just beautiful. Prizeworthy. Big Canoe News is considerably bigger. It's 3 times the length of this thing. It does look outward. It's full color. It does look outward. So it talks about national, international news as well as local stuff. Local dignitaries, local events, pets that need adopting, 4-H stuff, that sort of thing. In addition to that, it also does the full coverage. And right there at the end of the news section, not arts and entertainment, but news, is a 2-page book section. 2 full pages on an open paper, full color, and that is mine. I am now their book section editor. And I made the decision right away when I became book section editor that my section would not make that traditional small newspaper decision. Nothing wrong with that decision, but I made the decision that mine would be a very small, very small, it's the smallest paper in the country, but nevertheless, that it would be a very small representative book section. No need to have, Big Canoe is in northern Georgia, and there's no need to have a Georgia connection to get reviewed. Instead, my book review section, with the occasional column here and there, my book review section will review the books of the moment and will try real hard not to just go down rabbit holes or, be for reviews of books about Erasmus or anything like that. Instead, it will be a representative 4-square review section of a much smaller kind, but of a similar kind with what you would find in the New York Times or the Washington Post or whatever. I aim it to be the best book section of its size, very humble size, anywhere in the country. So and it's coming. It's the beginning of the month, so my copy of Big Canoe News is coming. But so far, it's the Vineyard Gazette, and I'm having a blast. This particular issue doesn't have a book review by me, so it has no books coverage, but it's still really good. And to go from no books coverage, we go to the other periodical that came in the mail, and that's the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement, the greatest literary periodical in the world. This one with State of Ireland. Look at that, huh? Lead articles about Ireland, and lots of other stuff, too. I read to you last time that someone broke the rule that I have propounded on this channel many times. Do not complain about a review of your book. And that started a little bit of a to-do in the letters page, and it continues today. The letter's a little too long to read. But in the last time we went through the TLS, a snotty author said that the reason that another author waited to publish a book condemning Edward Said's fundamental text, Orientalism, was because he was a coward. Even though this man wrote a scathing negative review of Orientalism when it came out, and also debated Said on stage. No case can be made that he was afraid. But nevertheless, this author, in rebutting a book review, a review of his own book, also made that contention. And the author that was maligned there writes a long defense of himself. It's very eloquent. It's very well done. But it's a little too long to read. Instead, there are a couple things that I want to mention here that I saw. One of them is something that I want. Every once in a while, I will see a book in the TLS that I want. And I don't know if I'm ever going to see it. I don't know if it's ever going to come out in America. I don't know if it's going to get a printing here. I would assume that it would. And it's a history work. And it's a history work that is... I'm sure if you read history, I'm sure you've noticed that some of them take on a life of their own and become immortal. They last for a long time. They're not just the work of the season. Even when the scholarship, accumulates beyond them, people still love them and still go back to them. And one of those books has had two English language translations already. It's the Waning of the Middle Ages by Huizinga, which had The Waning of the Middle Ages a long time ago. The book is over 100 years old, and it's the study is exactly what it says on the title. But the English language translation, The Waning of the Middle Ages, took a broadsword to the thing. It hacked huge pieces off it. It was maligned in certain quarters as a Reader's Digest version of Huizinga's book, even though Huizinga was, as this, there's an article here by Alexander Murray about it, in which he says that he was enthusiastically complicit. He wanted to reach that American audience, and boy, his book sold. It sold really well in America. It made him a nice, tidy pile of money. And then years and years passed, and people thought, okay, well, The Waning of the Middle Ages, that English language translation, is affectionately regarded, but it isn't good. It isn't good if your target work is nearly 600 pages long and your translation is only 300 pages long. Then we need a new translation, and there came one, The Waning of the Middle Ages. Probably, what does it say here? Probably 30 years ago, in 1997. 1997. So not quite 30 years ago. Another book came out called The Waning of the Middle Ages, another translation of Huizinga that I liked a lot. I don't have it here. I don't have either one. I don't have The Waning of the Middle Ages, and I don't have The Autumn of the Middle Ages. The 1997 book was The Autumn of the Middle Ages, which sort of is sort of more accurate to the title, to the Dutch title, but doesn't quite capture the flavor of it, because a lot of things can happen in the autumn, and you want more of a sense there. If you can get it in English, you want more of a sense of moving on towards winter, turning towards desolation, lessening. Which is why, even though The Waning of the Middle Ages is not technically accurate, it is a very good title. It captures very well the spirit of the original title and the spirit of the book. Probably why Huizinga agreed to it, aside from the money. And there is now a new translation. This one is by Diane Webb. It's almost 600 pages long. It's from Leiden University Press, so I will probably never get it. But they do list a U.S. price tag, $69. So I'm wondering if it is available in the United States. This one is called The Autumn Tide of the Middle Ages. And that's good. That's good. That may even be a little bit better than The Autumn of the Middle Ages, because that Autumn Tide, that sounds a little bit more like it's alluding to, for instance, a person's fading life. a person entering into the autumn tide of their life. That has a little bit more of a wistful, sort of melancholy tone to it. I like that. But I very much want the book. I don't know. I've never emailed these people before, and I don't know that I would. There is, needless to say, the Wheel of Fortune there. But I'll poke around and see if this is getting an American publication, and then maybe get it. But it's a nice long review of the book and also the translation. Very nice. But there's another one here that made me curious about the rest of you. It's by D.J. Taylor, and it's called To Be Continued. And it starts off with a pastiche, a sort of reimagining of Dance to the Music of Time from the specific viewpoint of one of the characters. And the author goes on, D.J. Taylor goes on and on about what those books are like. Mentions the other Bennett sister that's doing quite well. It's done quite well in the last year and change, which is a reimagining of the events of Pride and Prejudice, and a little before and a little after, from a different viewpoint than Elizabeth Bennet. And of course, it's a drop in the bucket. It's one of many, many thousands of such books. And I'm curious to know what the rest of you make of it. Do you like those things? I myself love them. I don't see the harm they do. DJ Taylor seems a little bit irate about them. I think it's just endless fun. And the sign that I'm not on DJ Taylor's side on this, if there is a side, I don't have any problem with such things at all. I want more of them. I think they're fascinating. But a pure sign that I'm on the opposite side is that when D.J. Taylor makes a sarcastic suggestion, I'm all for it. For instance, at one point, D.J. Taylor suggests that maybe we could have a version of Lord of the Rings from the viewpoint of Grima Wormtongue. And he gives a possible quote. All very well for Gandalf to condemn, but I should like to say that in my opinion I was acting in the role of mediator. And of course, Saruman was a very difficult man to work with. But he ends by saying, sad to relate then that I am currently excluded from this book world party. Only the other week I suggested to agent and publisher that it was time for someone to write a version of 1984 narrated by Julia, in which the question of whether she is in fact Honeytrap leading Winston Smith to perdition could be given an airing. A brilliant idea, everyone agreed, but one which could only be done by a woman. I can see I am going to have to content myself with rewriting Middlemarch from the point of view of Ladislaw, or setting a work on, to return to Tolkien, The Diary of a Balrog. Now, call me a literary floozy, but I want to read all those books. I would love a version of Middlemarch, that looks through the spectrum of Will Ladislaw. Probably there's been such a book. He's kind of the irresistible Byronic figure in the book. But Diary of a Balrog? I don't know. It'd be a totally inhuman, but not subhuman viewpoint. The Balrogs aren't just brainless monsters. We know this from the Silmarillion. They can think, they can reason, they can take orders, they can disobey orders. And maybe D.J. Taylor's Diary of a Balrog would answer one of the nagging questions about Lord of the Rings that fans have been asking for 100 years, which is, what is the Balrog doing in Moria all that time? Yes, Saruman says the dwarves dug too deeply there and woke the nameless dread, Durin's Bane. We don't even know this Balrog's name. We just know his latest accomplishment. But was it sleeping? Was this Balrog sleeping for ages? And once it was awake, why did it stay in Moria? Why didn't it go straight to Mordor? Nothing could stop it. Why wouldn't it just go to Sauron and serve him? What was the Balrog doing that whole time in Moria after it was awake, but before it met its doom from Gandalf? Maybe Diary of the Balrog would tell me. But anyway, those were the periodicals. And then there was a book. A book came to me. It wasn't in the mail. It was a home delivery. And it's this thing, this wonderful thing. Look at this. Look at the shape this is in. With one of these plastic library covers and everything. Just in better shape than I've ever seen this. This is what is somewhat unjustly known as the Rockwell Canterbury Tales. As you can see, this is a modernization, much like Neville Coghill. It's not the original Chaucer. It's brought into modern English. It's from almost 100 years ago, the 1930s. And it's, as you can see, it's by J.U. Nicholson. But nobody ever thinks of it that way. They think of it as the Rockwell Canterbury Tales, because it's full of Rockwell Kent's illustrations in this kind of a earth tones. he gives little full page pen portraits of all of Chaucer's pilgrims and all of their figures and hangers on. Just delightful. And I of course am a huge fan of Neville Cockill. Talk about making a pile of money, but I'm a huge fan of Neville Cockill if you're not going to read Chaucer, which you should. Okay? It's not the same thing as getting a modern English translation of Beowulf. You can't read Beowulf on your own without extensive instruction. You can't pick it up and try to figure it out. But Chaucer you can, without any instruction at all. Instruction will make things better, but you don't need it. And no matter how clever you are, as a versifier or a hack dog trot poet or whatever, Nicholson or Coghill or whoever, you are going to lose things when you modernize Chaucer's language. He was, of course, a master of what he was doing, and has, I think, the thing that bothers me about these modernizations, I love them. I haven't read this one in forever. I'm going to be so happy to read this again and keep it, as, there's no law that says you can't have many Chaucers. But one of the things that bothers me about modernizations, sort of brushing up like this of his work, is that one of the first things to go is a lot of his twinkling humor. I mean, we think of Chaucer as a funny author because of the body of the Miller's Tale or something like that, but he's a more intelligent and more suppressed, a kind of a gleeful humor ripples through almost everything in here, and it's shown most especially in wordplay. Chaucer's wordplay is glorious to look at, and it has to go by the board. If you're changing the words, that's going to be one of the first things to go. So there'll be that little background frustration, but I haven't read Nicholson's version in so long. And this is just lovely. I mean, it's just ordinarily you find these old Rockwell Kent versions of the Canterbury Tales or the Decameron or whatever in terrible shape. Ordinarily, you find them in terrible shape. So to find something like this, that is fantastic. And I don't ever need much of a reason to revisit Chaucer. Surely a Chaucer buddy read, a read-along is surely in the cards somewhere in 2021. But anyway, aside from that book, which was delivered, there was also one package. You're not going to get any sight of the beam, I'm afraid, today, because it's pouring rain, and that changes her outgoing personality completely. Let's see. She is wedged against me and buried under as much stuff as she can be buried under. She does not want to be bothered with the day, not at all, until the sun comes back, and it's not going to come back today, so I don't know what to tell her. We're going to have to go out. Sooner or later, we're going to have to go out and walk around in this. It makes me a tiny bit wistful, of course. I love her, I adore her, but it makes me a tiny bit wistful. There were times in my life when I had beagles who were up for going out in all weathers. And I know that might sound gross to you, but it does. There are elements of it that sound gross to me, but there is an amazing pleasure, something I'm not going to be able to convey to house pet people and also to non-dog people. There's an amazing pleasure in having a group of boys who is willing to tramp out with you in all weather. There's an amazing pleasure in going out in all weather, just to be out there in blizzards, in rain, in horrible windy weather. I have had in my life beagles who were willing to do that, happy to do that, just blast along with me. You come back destroyed, and you need to recover. Everybody needs to be clean. Everybody needs to be washed down. I need to take a shower and change everything, put all the clothes in the laundry. I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that in a long time. My pointer, Malin, was one of the two dogs I had when I started this channel. Malin, when she was younger, would have been up for going out in any kind of weather, especially wet weather. She didn't seem to mind it at all. Probably understandable, considering that she was a pointer. She didn't seem to mind it at all. And my Basset Hound Lucy, bless her, seldom realized that it was raining or snowing. She seldom noticed such things because she was too busy with the Mary Todd Lincoln voices in her head. But Lucy didn't like walking. She could be made. I could prevail upon her to go on a nice long walk if it was a beautiful day. But if it was inclement weather of some kind or other, any factor, no matter how small, could dissuade her from going on a long walk. And you might think, well, okay, why not just walk with Malin? But no, I learned early on that although Malin didn't mind the weather, and although Lucy didn't seem to care, they very much minded being separated. I learned that fairly early on. They were together with me with the last of my beagles for a few years. I had 2 beagles with them, the last beagles I will ever have. And when those boys died, I mean, we had been it'd been the 4 of them, and then me, and we'd been a big crowd, a big massive pile on the bed, chaos at feeding time, chaos at walking time, but fun, lots of fun. And when those boys went, when they went, first Dooley and then Weiser, when they were gone, then suddenly Malin and Lucy latched onto each other. I think the deaths of those older dogs bothered them quite a bit. And after that, they could not be separated. So I could not, if I had taken Malin for a walk in inclement weather just because of how beautiful it was, she would have gone about 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, realized that Lucy wasn't there, and literally panicked. I used to see her do it. She would just stiffen up, dart in all directions, just not have any idea what to do, just literally panic. So that at one time, one of those early experiments, I had to pick her up and carry her back to the house. Big black and white dog. I had to pick her up and carry her back because she was lost. And she spent probably, when we got back inside, she spent probably 30 minutes just gently licking Lucy's face. And Lucy had been just as upset. The people I lived with at the time said she'd been a wreck. So I couldn't take Malin out. So I never got to enjoy it. And I'm not going to enjoy it now, that's for sure. I'm definitely not going to enjoy it now. I have never had a dog who hated inclement weather the way this one does. Wind, if it's too windy, if it fusses with her beautiful mustachios. Snow, oh no. Snow piles up, and she's a tiny thing. She doesn't like anything getting taller than she is, but especially rain. Oh my God, the rain is like a personal omerta vendetta. No. So I guess. But I did get one package. There's one of these vacuum press things. I thought we'd see what it is together. What have we got here? It's lovely. Oh my. Oh, bless the people at Penguin. It's one of these drop letter classics. Oh my. It's one of these naked hardcovers. This one of Pride and Prejudice, with a slip on the back. Heaven and earth, are the shades of Pemberley to be thus polluted? With Coralie Bickford Smith. These are the cover designs by Coralie Bickford Smith. They don't have dust jackets. They have the built-in cloth bookmark here, and I don't think I have one of these for. I'm pretty sure that this is the. I didn't have one for Pride and Prejudice. There you go. Oh my. Oh my. And that quote on the back is, of course, from the climactic confrontation at the end of the book, where Lady Catherine de Bourgh accuses Lizzie Bennet of trying to poach her nephew. That his alliance, his marriage with his cousin has been long arranged since they were both in the cradle. And who are you? You're nobody. You can't. Are you going to pollute the shades of Pemberley, the great palatial estate that you would inherit if you became his wife? That is an absolutely great scene. 2 of the strongest willed people in the book confronting each other with no holds barred. And every time I read that scene, I'm grateful that Jane Austen gave it to us, because as I mentioned when I talk about this book, including in our mandatory read-along, Jane Austen has a maddening habit of not giving us pivotal scenes, just alluding to them, leaving them out, having them happen off stage. Oh, man. Okay, you would think, given how many times I've read this book, you would think that I'm in no danger of letting it preempt the reading that I have to do. I have a lot of reading, actual new book reading to do, the book that the kind of reading that is the heart and soul of my reading these days. You would think, given how many times I've read this, that there's no danger of that. But of course you'd be wrong. Actually, both of these present an enormous danger to my actual conscientious reading. Well, I'll have to control myself. This is $25 in America, and it's just some booktubers have a whole set of these. They have just dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And they look absolutely lovely on the shelf. Wow. Okay, so I have the Penguin hardcover classic of Pride and Prejudice. Great. All right, so that is the mail. We have Pride and Prejudice, the Canterbury Tales, the Vineyard Gazette, and the TLS. You don't have a weak spot there at all. So I'm going to wrap this up and console my little nugget. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.